Hello, book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today we are here to do a quarterly check-in for the first quarter of 2025. I don't think I've done quarterly check-ins in the past, but my memory is terrible, so maybe I have. But this year I decided that I would do quarterly check-ins just to really make sure that I am on top of the goals that I set for myself. So just like last year, I created a bingo board that had a combination of specific books that I wanted to read, as well as more general goals that I wanted to achieve. So today we're going to go ahead and check in on that bingo board to see how we're doing. And I'd also like to talk about some books that I really enjoyed reading here in the first quarter. This year I am tracking my books a little bit differently. In the past, I have just kind of copy and pasted my bingo board onto a Word document and then created like little tables with the amount of spaces that I needed to fill. So say I wanted to read 20 books by Black authors, I would have a table with 20 spaces, and as I read those books, I would fill it in. However, this year I have definitely been inspired by Amanda from the Reading and Writing Life because she uses Canva all of the time, and I'm a very visual person, so I found that this way of tracking books where I can use like the covers of the photos is just working a lot better for me. Now, I don't have a slide on Canva for every single one of my goals, so we're gonna go ahead and start by going through the ones that I do have a slide for, then we'll go through the few goals that I don't have a slide for, and then we'll end with some awesome books that I've read so far. Now, I do know for a fact that this is coming out before my March wrap up, so you might get some spoilers for that, but it's just the way that it goes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start looking at those goals and see how I'm doing. Alrighty, so here we are. We have our 2025 goal tracker. Here is a overarching view of my entire bingo board. As you can see, I haven't marked anything off on that yet, which means I haven't completely accomplished any of these goals nor read any of the specific books that I wanted to read. So goal-wise, obviously, I would be very surprised if I met any of those goals in the first quarter. If I did, it would mean that I didn't make difficult enough goals. But it would have been nice if I had like at least one of these specific books marked off, but we'll get more into that in a moment. So moving on to the next screen, we have the self-destruct books. So these are the 6 specific books that are actually on the TBR, or I'm sorry, on the bingo board, and I have not read any of these yet. I will say that as I'm filming this, I am in the process of doing a try a chapter vlog where I try a chapter of each of these books and then choose one that I'm going to read. So I have already decided which of those I'm going to read, but obviously I'm not going to tell you which one that is, so I don't spoil you for that vlog, but just know that by the end of April, at least one of these books will be read. And also, one of these books will have been DNF'd based on just that first chapter. So look forward to that vlog and look forward to me actually reading one of these books. Up next, when it comes to specific books, I chose 6 books that I wanted to reread. I have not reread any of these. I will say that I have A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest Gaines on my April TBR. It is kind of a low priority just based off of the fact that I have a buddy read, I have a book club book, and I have some books that I'm reading for a specific reading challenge that I'm doing, and this book does not fall under any of those categories, but I will be attempting to get to it because I'm definitely behind on my rereads. I'm not someone who often rereads, so it's always a little bit of a challenge for me to actually get to these, but these are all books I'm excited to reread, so I am hoping to make the time to do so this year. Now let's get into some goals that I've actually made some progress in. Just kidding. The first goal is to read 10 books with over 500 pages. I will say that I am currently reading a book that is over 500 pages, and I have also made progress in another book that is over 500 pages, but I've had to return it to the library. I've now since put myself on hold for it again, so hopefully, in the next month or two, I get a couple of these knocked off. I don't know what Natalie was thinking in the past, that I would read 10 books over 500 pages, but hey, we're gonna try our best. I know that she probably set this goal so that I would not be as intimidated by those longer books, but what can I say? I am intimidated, so we haven't made any progress here, but we'll try. We'll try. Up next, we have to read 10 books by a Hispanic or Latinx author. I have only read one book so far. The other book that I read by a Hispanic author, I DNF'd, so it does not count towards this. I am definitely behind on this goal, and I don't believe that I have any books by Hispanic authors on my immediate TBR, meaning my April TBR, so we're not looking super great with that, but I do have quite a few books on my TBR that I'm excited to get to. Quite a few of them are honestly giving kind of summer vibes, so hopefully throughout the summer this number increases. Then we have my goal to read 6 nonfiction books. I feel like this year I am in the best position to actually accomplish this goal, because in the past I think I've only read maybe 5. I don't think I've ever achieved the goal of reading 6 nonfiction. So as you can see, I've already read 2 with very similar covers, and I am currently working on another nonfiction that I'm just slowly and steadily making my way through in between my other reads. So I'm actually feeling really confident about this goal. I have been in a nonfiction mood, and there are a ton of nonfictions that I'm interested in, so I would be rather disappointed if I did not accomplish this goal this year. Up next, we have the goal to read 20 books by Black authors. This is a goal that I set myself pretty much every year, and I've always managed to accomplish it by like maybe one book, if not reading exactly 20 books. So usually this is one of those goals where I would technically like to overachieve on it, but I haven't so far. This year, technically, I am a little behind schedule. I mean, if we look at this, I should have read at least 5 books by Black authors in the first quarter. That did not happen. I did DNF a book by a Black author, so I would have achieved it if I didn't DNF that book, but it is the year of DNF, and I don't want to force myself to finish books that I'm not interested in and then give them a low rating or anything like that. So far, I've had pretty good success. I will say this book you may just see a little later in this video, because I had a grand old time with it. Then we obviously had One of Us Knows by Alyssa Cole. I am an Alyssa Cole fan when it comes to her thriller horrors. I know that they are not the most popular, but I have a great time with them. Then we had Shades and Shadow by N.K. Jemisin. This did accomplish a series for me, so very glad. And then Phoenix by Anne Slaver. I can't remember the author's name, and it's just like cut off a little bit. This was a KU book that I read the first one of, and I'm really excited to continue the series because it ended on such a cliffhanger. So lots of great books that I've read here. I'm looking forward to reading a lot more great books by Black authors. Up next, we have the goal of reading 20 books by, or not by, but that are translated. I have only read 4. So once again, we're a little behind schedule on this. I did decide to DNF Tokyo Ghoul, which was going to make up a pretty good chunk of my translated works, because all of those manga, I think I had about 11 of them left, were going to be part of this translated list. And that's just not the case anymore. So I will have to just figure out what I want to do, because I don't pick up a ton of translated works. Oftentimes they are very magical realism, literary fiction kind of vibes, which are not always my cup of tea. That being said, I have read The Phantom of the Opera, which was translated from French, I believe. Then Human Acts I recently finished, and that was from Korean. And then I have a couple of standalone manga, or I'm not sure if they're considered manga. I know there's multiple words that you can use for it, and I can't remember the other one. So I'm pretty sure that both of these are translated from Japanese, and I just kind of read them on Hoopla for a fun time. So I'm sure I'll read some more of these on Hoopla just because I like the boy love comics. But I would also like to get a little bit more actual like novel translations. I definitely need to go ahead and start my next Don Me series because I did finally buy the first book in a new Don Me series, which is featured in my last book haul, and I'm very excited to check that out. Up next, we have Kindle books. This was a goal I set for myself last year because I had a few books, not too many, but quite a few books on my Kindle that I just was never reading because, you know, out of sight, out of mind. And last year, I think I only read 5 out of 10. So far, I've read 3. I would say that we have a really good chance of accomplishing this goal, especially since I've been using my Kindle app on my phone. So sometimes instead of like scrolling on Instagram because I have a few moments, I will jump into a book on my Kindle and read that. So I'm hoping that that new habit of mine will increase my ability to get through more Kindle books. So far, I read Moonstruck by Only James. This is a backlog book. I bought the entire Necessary Evils series by this author last year, so I'm looking forward to continuing to make my way through that series. I then read Masquerade, and this book was one that I purchased specifically for a vlog, so it's not a backlog book, but I'm still counting it because I bought it and it was on my Kindle and I read it. And then I just recently read Convergence by T.D. Cloud. This was also a backlog book, but this isn't one that I purchased. This is one I got during a Stuff Your Kindle day, but they're still there and I still want to go ahead and read them. Up next, we have the goal of reading 5 books by Indigenous authors. This goal I think I've had at least for the last 2 years, and I'm pretty sure both years I ended up only reading 4 books by Indigenous authors. This year, considering in the first quarter I've already read 2 books by Indigenous authors. I did also DNF a book by an Indigenous author, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic. I went ahead and read Heroes of the Water Monster, which is the sequel to Healer of the Water Monster, so that completed that duology for me. Love that series. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but it is a middle grade book, definitely worth checking out. I did also read Trail of Lightning. Didn't love this book as much. It is a book that I own, and I have a feeling I'm gonna go ahead and read the second book through my library instead of purchasing it, but you know, I was interested enough where I would like to read the second book, so I'm pretty sure that'll happen this year. So that'll be another book, and then I do have a few other books on my TBR that I really want to prioritize by Indigenous authors. I will also say that the nonfiction I'm currently reading is by an Indigenous author, so it'll go on this list once I finish it. All right, so up next we have library books. So I wanted to read 24 books from my library. This does not include audiobooks, but it does include ebooks and also any comics or manga or whatever that I may be reading through Hoopla. So far we are doing pretty good on this goal, I would say, and especially since I'm trying to not buy as many books. Is that going good? It's going all right. I mean, it's not going terrible, but could be going better. But still, I was hoping to use my library a bit more this year, and so I think that so far we've done a pretty good job of that. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic that I will be able to achieve this goal. One thing I will say is that what I'm doing right now is that I downloaded the ebook of a book that I physically own so that I can read it on my phone since I don't have as much time to read it like physically. When I finish that book, since I own it physically, I'm not going to count it as a library book, even though I technically read it through the library. I may do that throughout the year where I try to get the ebook of a book I have physically, just so that I have more opportunities to pick it up, but I won't count it as a library book. Why? because I want to. That's why that's why I'm not going to count it. So these are going to be books that I read that are fully through the library and I didn't spend any money on them, essentially. So next we have disability representation. So far we're doing pretty good on this one. We have 2 TJ Klune books, Heat Wave and Flash Fire, which is the second and third book in the Extraordinary series. These have ADHD representation in our main character. These 2 books technically both have DID, dissociative identity disorder, in them. This one, the author states that while what the character is suffering from is heavily inspired by DID, it is technically a fictional disease, but since it's heavily inspired and has similar symptoms, I went ahead and still put it under disability representation. In Don't Let the Forest In, we have extreme anxiety disorder. In What Moves the Dead, we have tinnitus. Now, I didn't know if tinnitus was considered a disability. I know my mom has it, and I do also know that people commit suicide for having it because it is like that high-pitched screeching in your ear, and sometimes it's not like this high-pitched noise. It sounds like literally a freight train is like running by your ear. So it is something that can cause like mental distress to the point where people kill themselves. So I decided to go ahead and put it under disability representation. I hope I'm correct in that. And then Heroes in the Water Monster has PTSD representation. So that is what we have so far, and looking forward to reading some more books with disability representation. And that is the last of those. All right, so I'm gonna scooch over so I can go ahead and put the bingo board here so you can get a better look of it. So let's take a look and just go across the top. So Twisted Love is the first one. That was one of these books will self-destruct, so we already looked at that. Then we have Read pre-2022 physical TBR. I will say the nonfiction that I'm currently reading is on that TBR, but other than that, I have not touched any of the books that I have read or that I purchased pre-2022. The list is pretty small. Let me go ahead and count specifically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 books on that list, and one of them I'm currently working on. So once I finish that, there will be 9 books. Though technically there's only 8 because there is one book that I purchased pre-2022 that I'm not counting towards that goal. And that is actually the 3rd book to the, what is it called? Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. Yes. So I bought The Stone Sky, which is the 3rd book in that series, because I knew I was going to read it and I found it cheap. And I don't really have plans on reading that series this year. Maybe I'll start it. I am planning on rereading her Dream Blood duology first and then getting into that. So I am not including that in it just because it is the 3rd book in a series that I haven't started, but do have intentions of reading. The main reason for this goal is just because these books have been sitting on my shelf for so long and I'm not certain if I'm going to read them anymore. And I've been meaning to do like specific vlogs for this. I just haven't been in the mood to do those because I haven't been in the mood to read these books. Will I unhaul them at the end of the year if I don't read them? Some of them I definitely can see them being on their last straw. Other ones, I'm not sure yet. Moving on to the next goal, quarterly 48-hour readathons. So these are just readathons that I do on my own. I have done my quarterly 48-hour readathon for the first quarter, so we are on track to do that. I did film a vlog for that, so you can go ahead and check that out. Then we have that 25% of my books are written by an indie or self-published author. Let's check it out because I'm not sure. All right, so I have read 10 books so far that are either indie or self-pub, and I have read 23 books so far this year. So I would say that is definitely over 25% since it's almost 50% of that. So we're doing well on that goal. Talking about that, the next goal is to read 100 books. Like I just said, I've read 23 books so far. I don't want to say reading slowly for the first couple of months. The numbers were definitely a little bit lower than they usually are for me. I am not upset with the amount of books that I've read so far this year. I very much am one of those people who's attempting to read a little bit less, to kind of sit with my books a little bit more, to be willing to read more complex texts that take me longer to read, to read longer books, hence why I set that goal for reading so many books over 500 pages. So I've read 23 books out of 100. Technically, I should have read a couple more books here by the end of the month. So we are a couple books behind, but we're not feeling too bad about that or anything like that. So looking at the other goals, let's see what, let me make this bigger because my peepers cannot consume text that small. So that looks good. That looks good. 50% queer books. This one I am pretty sure I'm doing just fine on. This is not a goal I've ever struggled with, but I just continue to make it a goal because I want to, to be honest. So let's take a look. Yes, so 15 of the 23 books I've read have had prominent queer representation in them. So I don't always count the queer representation, even if it's technically in there. If it's like a minor character, it has to be like if someone was like, hey, I'm looking for a book that has queer representation, I would recommend this book to them for that specific reason. So we are definitely doing a good job on that. Read 50% of my purchase books. So this essentially means that of all the books that I buy this year in 2025, I will read 50% of them. Yeah, no. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I have bought 22 books this year, which is one book less than I've read. And I have read 4 of them, and 3 of those I have read because I purchased books that I had already read in previous years. So essentially I bought some special editions of TJ Klune's Green Creek series. Those I already read, and I just counted that as one book, even though it's technically 4. Heat Wave by TJ Klune I have read because I purchased the book with the intention of reading it. It's Witchcraft by Cole McCade, is one of his Criminal Intentions series books, and I am looking to collect more of those because I started off reading the series on KU, so I'm collecting the first few books as I go along. And then The Night Swim, which was technically a late Christmas gift because my mom gifted me this book, but when it came in, it was like water damaged. So we were like, excuse me. So that finally came in. But other than that, I have not read like any of the books that I have purchased this year. So I don't know what to say about that. That goal is flopping, and it's flopping hard. Then we have finished 15 series. I have finished a few series so far. Let's take a look how many I've finished. I will say that I have only started 5 series so far, which isn't terrible. I think that's not too terrible a number, but let's take a look at what we finished so far. We did DNF Tokyo Ghoul. I don't count DNFs as part of this challenge because we're looking at completing series. So we did finish the Extraordinary series by TJ Klune, so yay for that. We then finished Healer of the Water Monster, which I talked about earlier, which was that book by the Indigenous author. And then we had the Inheritance trilogy, which we also finished. So only 3. Why was I coming in here feeling confident? I don't know. 3. Could be more. Could be more. So, still feeling optimistic, but progress needs to be made. Okay, 2 more goals. The first is spend less than $1,000. I can tell you for a fact that I have spent less than $1,000. In fact, I can tell you how much I have spent if I get back to that spreadsheet. We have just so many spreadsheets. What are we even doing? So a lot of the books that I bought so far, I used like gift cards and stuff on. So they were either like $0 or they were cheaper because I just had to pay like a little bit after the gift card was used. That being said, like I said, I bought those special editions and that was $165. So that definitely bumped me up, but I don't buy a lot of special editions. It's just I don't like the new editions of the Green Creek series. I have the indie published ones, but at the same time, the first 2, they're right here. They're right here. So as you can see, the first 2 are like the little shorty patortis, and then the next 2 are the taller ones. And so I would like a matching set, and I really like the artwork on these, so I went ahead and purchased them. And I don't feel bad about it because I never buy special editions. So far I have spent $272.58. So I will say I usually spend the most money in the first quarter because I buy the most books, because I have gift cards. A lot of places have like sales and stuff going on. So I am pretty confident that we will be fine and dandy. Then if we take a look, the next goal is to read all 11 of my challenge books. So far, I am doing quite good on that goal. I will say I did DNF the first one, just like I did last year. Whoopsie. So the first book was Johnny Appleseed. I did DNF that book. Not my vibe. Human Acts, I already mentioned in my translated books. I did finish. And then Spellbound, which was the one book by a Hispanic author that I've read so far, and I also finished that. For April, I selected the Tea Dragon Society, which is a small kind of graphic novel, picture book kind of scenario. I am on hold for it at the library, but as soon as I get it, it'll be a quick, easy read. So I know that I will be on top of that. So far, feeling pretty good about that challenge. And then the final goal is, oh, that was the final goal because I did the money one before the 11 chapter. Okay, so those are all of my goals. Let's go ahead and take a look at some books that I've read this year that I just really love and want an opportunity to talk a little bit more about. All right, so I have 3 books here that I want to talk about. 2 of them I actually read here in March. One of them was the first book I read in the month, and the other one is the last book I read in the month. So March was one of those months that had a nice crusty bread for its sandwich. I'm not going to go too in depth about any of these books. The first book I'm going to talk about is present in my February wrap up if you want to go ahead and check that out. And for the other 2 books, I'm sure I'll talk about them more in depth in my March TBR. So the first one is actually a nonfiction book, and that is The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay. I tabbed this book quite a bit. I only tab my nonfiction books. I'm not like an annotator or anything like that, but this book was so impactful. I'm so glad that I finally got to it. This is written by a trans author, so its own voices. It is a great resource if you are looking to learn more about the trans experience and the issues that the trans community is currently facing. This technically focuses on the trans community within Britain, but a lot of the issues they are facing, trans people here in America are facing as well. So I loved the writing in the story. I loved the stories that the author told, the information that she provided. This book focuses on very relevant topics, and it doesn't waste time on the kind of made up issues that a lot of conservatives use to destroy the trans community. It doesn't talk about like, what bathroom should I be using, and should I be on the girls sports team or the boys sports team? Like, it doesn't talk about any of that BS, because in the end, none of that really matters. This talks about the real issues. It talks about healthcare. It talks about homelessness. It talks about like basic human rights. It talks about the discrimination that trans people, both masculine and feminine presenting, experience within the feminist movement. So this is one of those books that I think everybody should read, and it was definitely the most impactful and memorable book that I've read so far this year. The next two books are nonfiction, and they're both young adult. I feel like I'm always like, I'm moving away from young adult. I just don't like young adult as much, but young adult, it just can slap sometimes. It really can. And the first is one that has been getting tons and tons of attention and tons of love, and that is Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. This is a kind of fantasy horror story that is set in a boarding school. We have three characters. We are primarily following from the point of view of Andrew, and he and his twin sister attend the school and are friends with a boy named Thomas. However, over the summer, something strange has happened, and Thomas's parents are missing and perceived to be dead, and the police are looking at him as a potential suspect. It seems that Andrew's sister is arguing with Thomas, and that there is some weird stuff going on between them, and Andrew is just noticing that everyone's behavior around him is a little bit different, and this all comes to a head when he sees Thomas fighting monsters in the woods behind the school. And it seems that these monsters are coming from Thomas's drawings inspired by Andrew's stories. And so the two boys start to fight these monsters together and figure out exactly how they can stop these monsters without Thomas having to give up his passion, which is drawing. And as they fight these monsters, they get closer and closer to each other. This is a story of obsession. I would say that while their relationship is addictive, it is not always the healthiest, because both of these boys are going through such traumatic things. It is not surprising that their relationship has just a hint of toxic to it, but I absolutely adored their relationship. There is a sexual representation in here in Andrew that was really well done. There is anxiety representation in here. I kind of mentioned it when I was talking about my books that have disability representation. That was also really well done, and the writing is absolutely stunning. So this book had so many great things going on. I would say that it was definitely quite creepy at times, and the ending had me questioning myself for sure. So this is definitely one of those hyped books that is well worth all the hype that it is receiving. And the third book that I absolutely loved this first quarter that I just finished, and ever since I finished it, I keep wishing that I was still reading it. You know, you love a book when you're like, I wish that book wasn't over yet. I wish I was still reading it. And luckily this book has a second book. It is a duology, and I have already ordered it, so hopefully I can get to it soon. And that book is going to be Pretty by Keith F. Miller Jr. This is a book that has very few ratings and reviews on Goodreads, so I definitely think that this is an underhyped book. I want everyone to read this book, specifically young Black men. So this book does an incredible job of countering Black stereotypes, especially when it comes to people that are living more low income, and also people who have ties two gangs. In this case, our characters are not tied to a gang. They have ties to an organization known as the Black Diamonds, which works to protect the Black community, and that includes them interacting with the local gangs to keep peace within that area. However, it is very clear that there's a lot of people that don't distinguish this organization from gangs. They just see them as an organization that is primarily Black people, if not poor Black people, and they're like, well, you know what that means. In this case, we are following Leroy as well as Jay. And in the beginning of these books, Leroy is finally approaching Jay and letting him know the feelings that he has for him. He's like, hey, I like you, okay? And Jay is very confused by this. Jay is someone who has very low self-esteem. He is darker skinned. And we know that unfortunately, even within the Black community, darker skinned people are often seen as less attractive, and that is something he has definitely absorbed throughout his life and is struggling to unlearn throughout this book. There's a ton of other things happening here as someone is targeting the Black Diamonds. Leroy's aunt, who is a Black trans woman, as well as his older brother, kind of lead this organization, and so their family is being targeted, and Leroy is fighting to keep both Jay as well as himself and his family safe throughout all of this. But let me tell you, the relationships in this story, and I'm not even just talking about between Jay and Leroy, which throughout the story they are definitely kind of working towards a place where they can be together, because Leroy is pushing Jay away because towards the beginning of this book, an event occurs where Jay gets injured because Leroy's family is being targeted, and so he's trying to protect him. And they're trying to kind of find a way where they can be together again. But outside of that romantic relationship, the friendships, the family, the brotherhood throughout this, both Leroy and Jay have older brothers. And oh my gosh, the way that they are so protective of their younger brothers, the way that they accept and love their brothers for who they are. There was so much queerness within this book. Like, both of their older brothers were queer as well. And I honestly, when I picked up this book, was worried that we would be dealing with two boys who are within a very homophobic community. But no, they had so much love, so much acceptance. Leroy has a best friend who's a lesbian. Like I said, his aunt is a trans Black woman who's married to a man, and there's just so much casual queerness and just like absolute queer acceptance within this book. There's also a ton of exploration of emotions, which I think does a great job of fighting the idea of toxic masculinity being within this book. When I tell you that this fights stereotypes, because the descriptions of the way these people dress, first off, they look fly as fuck. I'm not even joking. Like, every time they were describing what these guys were wearing, I was like, dang, they got fashion sense up the wazoo. But they would, you know, talk about wearing like the oversized shirts and the do-rags and the grills, and then they're out here like snuggling up to their boyfriend, because just because someone presents a certain way doesn't mean that they have to act a certain way. So I think it was really doing a great job of breaking down the stereotypes of, you know, hard Black man in the Black community that are full of toxic masculinity and just like the urge for violence. These boys love everyone around them, their brothers, them, even the friends that are around them. No matter if they are lower income, higher income, these boys love each other. They are such good friends, and they are willing to show each other their emotion, their tears, their pain, their fear. And oh my gosh, I don't understand why more people haven't read this book. The second book just came out in January, so now is the perfect time to check it out. I have a feeling the second book is definitely going to be dealing a lot more with like gentrification. This whole kind of book has been leading up to who is hunting the black diamonds, and it's clearly someone who wants to take control of this area for financial reasons. So I'm really excited to see where this story goes and to continue watching our characters. I know I was just talking about this for a really long time and I said it wouldn't, but this is my first time talking about this book to anyone, and I love it so much. Like, literally, please, please, please read this book and show this author because he is so cute. Look at him. Oh my god, he's so cute. Show him some love and read his book and give it 5 stars because that is exactly what it deserves. I would not be surprised if this ended up on my top books of the year. All right, guys, now that I'm done gushing about Pretty, because apparently that is the main purpose of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to know how you are doing on any goals that you may have set for yourself. I would also love to know what some of your best books so far are. And as always, guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!